All right, well, hey, let's go ahead and get started. I know there's people coming into the room, but we might as well get going. Hi, I'm John English. I'm here with Katherine Lam and my business partner, Timmy Trayvon. I'm going to introduce Katherine a little bit more formally here in just a few minutes. But first of all, this is being brought to you by Visual Arts Passage. And what we are is an online art school dedicated to helping people develop their careers and to give the information from everything's delivered by working artists and to try to offer accurate current information to help you develop your career. And I must say, we're doing a really good job with it. So, and thank you, Katherine.
Yeah, of course. It's on me.
Getting your career started is important. It's if you want to be an industry artist, if you want to be a concept artist, an illustrator, an animator, it all comes from what you're able to do. And you're measured as an artist by your portfolio. Portfolio is everything. And so to get started with, I'm going to show you a few images of Katherine's portfolio. Because I just amazing success story. Katherine is one of the most sought after working illustrators in the world right now. And she works editorially, which for magazines. She works in the books industry and she works in the film industry. And the work is astounding. Katherine, you're welcome to chime in what these pieces are done for.
Yeah, the last one I did for the New Yorker. It was for a film review of the new film Settlers. And this one is a piece for the New York Times. It was called America, Can We Talk About Your Drinking?
Oops.
Yeah, this one I did for the economics. I work a lot in editorial. This one was about dementia in senior citizens.
We're going to talk more about, because I organize these pieces a specific way. So we're going to come back to it and talk a little bit more about the function of the pieces and the different directions, because I know I was fortunate enough to have Katherine as a student for a short period of time at the Illustration Academy.
Yeah.
And I think we offered Katherine a lot of benefit and allowed things to get started maybe quicker from the experience and learning from the industry kind of legends that were at that workshop. And part of it was identifying a direction in a portfolio. And as I remember, and I think looking back, that Katherine's portfolio was really aimed at the editorial market when Katherine started.
Yeah, I would say when I was at the Illustration Academy, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do. But being at the Illustration Academy told me that editorial was it was a path I could go towards. And after that, I started to gear everything towards the editorial field. Make sure that all my work that fits into it and all the art directors would like it.
But this piece is for the film industry, correct?
Yes, yes.
And so, I look at it as the editorial world as a traditional illustrator as being kind of the easiest barrier of entry. Maybe not the way you did it. No. But Katherine moved to New York and kind of dove in head first.
Yeah.
And to do that and to make that work, Katherine really had to consider focus, and there had to be some type of unity, something to hold it all together, and identifying, the aesthetic part of it, what looks like you, and then identifying at that point one function, and that was the editorial direction. And it allows it to be memorable quicker that way. I'm going to keep clicking through these, Katherine, because we're going to talk at length about this stuff, and I just wanted to kind of warm you up for it.
Okay.
um,
Some film posters I did recently, the one on the right, Badlands.
Absolutely awesome. Amazing. And this is for one of my favorite art directors, Eric Skillman. I would assume that was Eric at Criterion.
Yes, yes, he is one of the best art directors.
And this was under personal work. And
yeah, I didn't know where to categorize it.
And
but,
I put these last two pieces in under personal. I put this piece in. This is the first piece I chose because I absolutely love this as a painting. I just think it's marvelous. And I know you have them under your personal section. Organize your portfolio. And I think that's really important that number one, that it's organized that way, but it's still connected. I can see how personal work has brought you to the film because it's very similar to some of the film work that you do. So it's very interesting how you have it all organized, and it's well thought out, and it's not just, you walk away from it and first of all, it's all beautiful. It all looks like it's done from the same individual. It comes from the same place, personal voice. And then it has each section is organized. You can see the function, and it makes it very usable for art directors to identify and relate to. So absolutely awesome job. I'm going to scroll through just a couple of things that I've done in the past. I always think it's important to know who what you're getting, who you're talking to. I focused a lot as an illustrator, which I don't do illustration anymore. I'm very much focused as making paintings for gallery sales. But I focused on likeness. I did a lot of celebrity portrait. This is actually in an open drawing night. But drawing humans and being able to get a likeness of a human was a big part of what I did. And when I started out all editorial also, and then it went lots of different directions. So this is much more current of what I do now. And I'm a more painterly version of Katherine and simple shape design. Katherine is the ultimate shape designer. I just love the look and feel of the work. So with that said, now you know who you're talking to. I really believe portfolio is everything. It's everything that represents an artist in our industry. You get what you show, you are what you make. And you can control that. You can control by learning a tremendous amount about the industry, learning who does what in the industry and for whom. It's very, very important and a big part of identifying, what goes in your portfolio. So things to think about. And obviously the portfolio represents you as an artist. I always tell people to try to think about a portfolio as a job interview. We make portfolios for art directors in our industry. Art directors are who we're going to pursue. I really think the emerging artist, the job of the emerging artist is to become memorable to the audience that they defined. And that means the audience of art directors. If you want to work for Rolling Stone magazine or Time magazine or the New Yorker or whatever, a book company, an animation studio, as a visual development artist, you have to identify what their needs are. What's the function? And who is it that you have to connect with? Who are you making that portfolio for? Katherine, when you started pursuing, I know you had to think that way. At least we told you to think that way.
Yeah. I mean, like the portfolio, it doesn't matter who you are or where you went to school. You know, the portfolio is really all that matters when it comes to like putting it there, putting it in front of an art director, because that's all they're going to see. They're not going to. It is like a job interview, but they're not. You're not actually physically there. I mean, sometimes you are, but for the most part, they're really just judging by your work.
And you know, the importance of thinking about, okay, I'm going on a job interview. I think any intelligent person that has a job interview scheduled, that they'll research the company that they're going to interview with. How can you best be of benefit to that company? That's what you have to think about as an industry artist is, do I have the skill sets? Do I have the ability to solve the problems, the visual problems they're looking to be solved? I think it's imperative that you think that way. Even successful artists in the industry that are working, you know, but I can see you doing it now, Catherine. Identifying new clients and, you know, sending things that to their, you know, putting things in front of them. You know, it's a continuous chase. You know, you have to understand the industry well enough to identify that audience and identify what the skill sets that you're going to need.
At the end of the day, an art director has a job, and you need to make sure that you fit that job.
Right. You know, and it's something kind of interesting for an emerging artist. You know, Catherine, you were, I think, got started as quick as anybody that I've ever seen get started in the industry, and started working for pretty major clients within the first year or two that you were out of school. Art directors have the ability to hire almost anybody. You know, they offer budgets that most artists will work for. And, you know, there's the editorial market, why I say it's the easiest barrier of entry, because it's not just New York City, it's St. Louis. And, you know, I was in Colorado last week in Vail, Colorado. Vail, Colorado had 2 town magazines, and they were beautiful. They had photography and illustration in them. And there was a market there for an illustrator if they wanted to pursue that.
Yeah, there's like online magazines and websites. There's international magazines. There's like private companies have magazines too.
Oh, institutions. Think about you know, Dale Stefanos teaches the portfolio class with me, and he's a very, very successful editorial illustrator. He works for Time, the New Yorker, and tons of political magazines. But he said he makes most of his money, most of his income comes from institutional magazines or magazines that you see at the doctor's office. You know, you go in and, you know, all kinds of institutions or different directions of business have magazines associated to that part of the industry and to their industry. And think of all the sports magazines, so, you know, Runner's World, there's 3 or 4 great runners magazines. There's bass fishing magazines. There's things that you wouldn't imagine that requires, and you know, all the in-flight magazines, all of the things that you know, start really paying attention to that really make the editorial market very, very broad. And they offer an entry, you know, again, I know that, you know, well, D Magazine in Dallas, it's a great magazine. But not every town, Kansas City, you know, Kansas City has a pitch in the Kansas City Star, the newspaper. That's all editorial work. It doesn't pay what New York Times pays, or it doesn't pay what Time Magazine pays. So it has kind of levels of entry to it that are easy or are much more obtainable for somebody getting started. But again, you have to identify those things. You have to look and understand the industry well enough to really, again, do your due diligence, understand who's doing what and buying what.
John, I was just going to ask, sorry to butt in, but just, I mean, that's just like the tip of the iceberg in that one corner of illustration.
Oh, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not just talking about editorial, right? Yeah.
No, editorially, the reason I brought it up and why I was pointing it out in um, Catherine's portfolio at the beginning was mostly consisted of editorial work when Catherine started, but it has expanded into the publishing world. It's expanded into the film world. Most of the artists that I know, contemporary successes of Edward Kinsella, of Jeffrey Allen Love, of uh, Sterling, Victor Nye, artists that started editorially and expanded. Now Victor kind of did everything all at once. I mean, just a major talent. But I think it is true. And the other thing that makes it such a great starting place is it's probably the most seen. It's one of the most seen areas of the industry. Can you imagine doing? Catherine does a lot of work for the New York Times. A lot of people see her work. That's just part of it. Yeah, if you commit, and I think it's important when I get to this last subject here, is committing to a direction. It will help you create focus and consistency with your portfolio. The goal is, by identifying who you want to work for, is to be memorable to them. Most art directors don't hire, they're not perusing through all of the trade magazines or the trade shows, Communication Arts or Society of Illustrators. They may not have them open, but they remember things from them. I think most art directors that I've spoken to, they make the commitment, or they think of an artist from somebody they remember. And I really believe that's true. And that is, so becoming memorable to them is very, very important. And there's lots of different ways to do that. You enter shows, you send direct emails or a newsletter, you go to conferences, you send direct mail. Anything you can do to get on their radar, and in a reasonable fashion.
Don't be creepy.
Yeah. It's subtle stalking is how Dale Stefanos explains it.
It really is.
So something that I always try to suggest, and something we like to do in our program, people come into our program with all kinds of different skill levels, knowing different things. And so you end up teaching to the individual. And I think the individual has to take it upon themselves to really consider where they are and consider what their needs are. And what are your options? Do you want a full-time job, or do you want to be a freelance artist? If you want to do editorial work, you're going to be a freelance illustrator. If you want to do, work as maybe as a character designer, or as in the animation realm, you can consider studio hire for that different part of the industry. But as an illustrator, almost everything's a freelance position. In the publishing world, in the film, doing poster work or advertising work for the film industry, all of that is freelance driven. And you have to think about, is that right for you? You have to consider what part of the world you live in. Are there opportunities in the town that you live in? Do you need a visa to live a certain place, to work for a certain studio? Do you have to get a degree to do that? I mean, there's all kinds of factors that relate to yourself. And so think logically about that. And what is it you want from this? Again, location, are you willing to locate? What is it you want from this? My father, the life in general, finance and relationships. My father used to say all the time, the wrecker of most artists is the wrecking of most artists' careers is either from finance or romance. So I used to always laugh about that. So you have to really get control of everything. And Catherine, I know that you moved to New York City at a very early time in your career. You kind of threw
right
yourself in
after
it.
I graduated.
Yeah, you put immense pressure on yourself. Maybe you can talk about that just a little bit and
Yeah,
tell people what you did.
yeah, like I did consumer options after I graduated, and I considered that I should go, like my case study, I guess. I considered that I should go to freelance because at the time, well, I had applied for a lot of full-time jobs and nobody was hiring me. So it wasn't more an option rather than I was like forced to do to freelance. But yeah, like a lot of the,
Let me ask, what were the full-time positions in? I mean, what was it? Was it in like as a visual development artist?
yeah, it was visual development, which I didn't gear my portfolio towards. So it wasn't like they wanted to like hire me anyway, but like I had geared my a lot of my portfolio to like editorial, which is freelance. But yeah, a lot of things that I had to consider was, should I move? Because I could have the option to stay with my mom in Maryland, or I could have the option where I move to New York, I pay rent, expensive rent, I have to, but I was like in a prime location, but at the same time I freelance, so I didn't really have to go outside all the time. It was a lot to consider. And oh, a cat. Yeah, so it was just like a lot to consider, and things like relationships, finances, everything, they all factor into like your decisions and like why, oh God, why you would have to like what you do, what your next move is and everything. A lot of people, they, finance is a huge thing for them, which I could completely understand, but like it does control a lot of like the decisions that you make. It does factor into a lot of like, certain uh, things that you that make you an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, having a plan is really important, and then understanding kind of all the things that can affect your career. You got to kind of take it all in, and you could be the best drawer and the painter in the world and fail for a number of different reasons. It's not just about the picture making. I like to think the picture making is the most important aspect of it, and the ability to visually communicate. There's some people that are just they're not easy to work with, and they're going to get discarded very quickly. You have to be sensible in this industry. You have to learn to live within your means as an artist. I think being an artist, it's really the only thing. It's the only thing I've ever done. It's the only thing I've ever. Um, uh, it's the only way I've ever made a living, and it comes with a lot of. I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with it, but there's a if you can do it, and you want to be an artist, and that's what you're striving to do. It is like the ultimate. It is making a living and being able to take care of putting your kids through school, paying all your bills, buying your home. All of that stuff came from the art world for me, and that is a responsibility that you have to take on. And again, make it that you shouldn't be ashamed of making a living as an artist. It's something that I think it comes with a lot of responsibility. And you really have to think about everything that all the moving parts that are associated with it. So I'll keep going here. Things to think about with your portfolio, and we'll get back to more of this. Make it easy for the art director. Don't show an art director. Say you want to be a fantasy cover artist. Don't show them children's book work. Don't show them editorial work. Show them things that relate to what they're looking for. They have, again, you could show them the most beautiful images in the world, but if it's not what they're looking for, they're not going to have any interest in hiring you at all. So make it easy for them. show only functional images, images that relate to what they're looking for, and then recognizable subjects. When I say that, think about, I always try to break it down in the simplest form, like, as doing celebrity portrait, doing likenesses. If that's something that you want to do, don't show a portrait of somebody that they don't recognize, because they'll think it's a lousy portrait. They'll think they won't know how to assess the portrait. They'll think it's a bad portrait. You're trying to make it look like, it's a bad portrait of done as somebody that kind of looks like that. I've run into that looking in other people's portfolios. If you want to show that you're a great storyteller, you better show them a story that they understand. If they can't understand the story, they don't know if you've done a good job telling the story. So you have to really be on track with what you're showing. And if it's showing the function that audience that you identified, what they're looking for. Keep it focused. If you go to Katherine's website, you see everything's organized. The images all are based in editorial, book, film, and personal. I believe that's the categories you had. And that's pretty common for most to do that, or depending on where they work in the industry. Some will have portraits, some will have, some will have viz dev, character design, creature design, whatever. But as on the illustration side, it's usually directed, or they might have advertising and institutional work in there also. A voice, when you walk away from looking at a portfolio, I think, it should have range. And we'll talk more about that in a second, but it needs to feel like it all came from the same person. Every art director that I've ever spoken to about this topic, or that we've had come in and talk to our program, the not very long into the conversation, they use the word trust. I have to trust the artist I hire. They have to trust they're going to get what they saw in the portfolio. And if you go too far afield from that, there's going to be a problem. Most likely there's going to be a problem. And I know that even really well identified artists that struggled with that, for, trying to do something, surprise an art director is usually not the best scenario.
John, before you get along too far, somebody asked, how would you most simply describe what visual development is?
Katherine, you probably know more about it. I have a simple answer, but go ahead and explain it.
Visual development is just developing the look of a film, basically. It's developing, it's like before they kind of make and the script and direct the film. It's trying to figure out what it looks like. Is it supposed to be really bubbly and happy, like a kid show, or is it supposed to be horror? It's supposed to be scary and certain themes and stuff. So it's all about developing the aesthetics of the outcome.
Would you say it's almost synonymous with concept art?
I would say it's almost synonymous, but yeah, it is actually. Concept art, I think, is a broader term to consider the pre and post production.
Right. Yeah, but it's really a term in our industry that's really, I think it's most focused at animation than anything. Or it used to be. Now Marvel's got a visual development department. It's the pre-visualization, it's the design of the characters, the creatures, the environments. They design these things, but remember, in that part of the world, in the entertainment world, everything has to be made. And so somebody else is going to animate them. Somebody else is going to, make them real or realize them. They are the creators of those things and the designers of mostly character, creature, and environment. I think that if you think about it, I've always compared, and a lot of great visual development artists are very much akin, as it relates to illustration, to children's book or picture book illustrators. The biggest difference is the picture book illustrator, they have to do the storyboarding, they have to do the character design. but they make all the finishes also. They do the whole process. Most visual development stops and then somebody else picks it up and takes it whatever part of the pipeline or whatever direction they are to make that a finished product. Is that a fair thing to say, Catherine?
Yeah, totally fair. I think better than what I said.
Okay, so back to this memorable thing. Think of the artists and all the artists that we know and admire, the people that rise to the top of our industry, where you don't need to see a signature on the piece. You don't need to see a credit. There's something embodied into their work. And Katherine has that. When I see a piece of Catherine's work, I know it's hers. I know it's Catherine's. It's just, it embodies Katherine. And whether it be Gary Kelly, whether it be Chris Payne, whether it be Victor Nye, whether it be Greg Manches, whether it be Sam Weber, I mean, all these great illustrators, Sterling Hunley, you know it's their work when they see it. The power of that in this industry is massive because it makes it really easy for an art director to remember it and categorize it. As they're reading a brief for a script, and this is how most art directors have said that they start thinking about aligning artists with an assignment, is that first happens when they start, the first time they read the brief for article. And if that's true, being memorable is like the objective of the emerging artist. How do you get somebody to think, oh yeah, I mean, Edward Kinsella is a perfect example. It's like, I can see his work from a mile away, it's his. And so it would be real easy for an art director to say, this is a project that works for Edward because it's so identifiable. And Catherine's work does the same thing. So being memorable, having a voice is incredibly important. Let's keep going here. This is actually a page from one of Edward's classes that I kind of cobbled together because I think it's so good. A portfolio should have 10 to 15 images in it. Excuse me. It should have range within its outcome, meaning with that focus, whether it's editorial or it's book, you need to be able to show you can do lots of different things. As a book illustrator, you need to be able to show you can show action. You need to be able to carry your character in multiple forms. Can you do an establishing shot? Can you do a cover? They all have different functions. So it's a range. Can you do a spot illustration? It can still be for the same function, and it's going to give the art director opportunity to say, oh, this they can handle this project, or they can handle multiple things. It's not just one thing that they can do. Range should not confuse function. I mean, you don't have to, like if you're showing a character for a children's book, you don't have to show orthographics or turnarounds that would relate to the biz dev industry. That's very different, a very different type of character. Make it personal. Back to what we were talking about, voice. Find, we all have influences and we all absorb and learn through other artists. The catch is to mold you into these influences, to become something a little bit different. And artists can wear their influences on their sleeve where you can see their influences, but there's a uniqueness to it. There's something that they add to it that's very personal. And I think it's important that we try to achieve that. Don't his throwaway. Anything can be an illustration. And I think what he's trying to say here is keep exploring, keep trying different approaches, different materials, different looks. It's going to help you develop. I think it helps you develop that personal aspect of it as much as anything. And then take risks. take risks as an artist, as a creator, to keep trying to keep learning, exploring. You know, I love the fact that on Katherine's website, that personal category there, that's what that's there for, is to grow. And I was told by a very successful artist, happened to be my father, told me that while once I got very busy as an illustrator, he said, you know, you got to really be careful. He said, because you're being hired to do the same thing over and over again. And he said and he said it happened to him, happens to everybody when they get busy. He said, every time you do an illustration, try to do a piece of artwork for yourself. And it became a habit. And I watched him do it his whole career, and he just constantly evolved. And I think that you're kind of you become very true to yourself by doing that. You know, it gives you an opportunity to keep learning and keep growing. I think it's a very healthy way to think. Go to the next thing here. Focus. This is kind of back. We're back at Katherine's portfolio here. Editorial, book, and film were the strongest directions on your website, were the categories on your website, along with the personal side. But advertising, institutional is doing like point-to-point business brochures, annual reports. It's a huge part of the illustration industry. Always has been. It's also very lucrative. Sequential, being able to do graphic novels and comics. The visual development world we were just talking about. The RPG game world. I haven't spoken much about the concept side or the character development side that we teach. I'll talk a little bit about that as we get a little further along here. But our program and the way that we deliver information relates to all of this. And you know, the RPG games, if you don't know, like Magic the Gathering, it has become a very, very, well, it's been very popular for a long time. Now the artists that are pursuing it, really well-known illustrators and fantasy artists that work to develop cards, they resell their original paintings. Most of them are trying to do them traditionally now because the resales become so popular that they sell for a lot of money. It's just another venue, and it's another part of the industry that's very lucrative and very helpful for illustrators to make a living. But you should explore all these things. Figure out where you would feel where you would fit the most. I think I'm going to talk about that a little bit here. This is our portfolio brief that I teach portfolio development with Dale Stefanos. Dale Stefanos, the leader of the class. I just annoy him most of the time, but I contribute to that class more than anything in our program because I think it's the thing. It's where everything kind of comes together, and you're using what you've learned from the earlier classes. You're starting to put finished pieces together, and the goal is to create a portfolio brief, meaning I want to identify my audience. Who are the companies and venues, institutions I want to work for, and who are the art directors at those establishments? That becomes your audience. I think it's best to research. You got to know the resources. These are the juried shows in our industry: Society of Illustrators, American Illustration, Communication Arts, Spectrum are probably the most obvious ones right now. And depending on where you want to go with your work, because they have different, you know, American Illustration is going to have a lot more editorial and a lot more conceptual work to it. Society of Illustrators has been the flag bearer and has been around since 1901. They're on their 65th, I believe, publication, the annual that they're producing. Those books, then all of these publish a book every year on the shows. You have to enter them and they're juried shows. Those books were originally created for art directors to find talent. That was their purpose. And so the world could see, oh, hire these art directors. When I got started in the early 1980s, that was the go-to, that and then communication arts. But if you got work in there, if you were accepted in there, that was the beginning of having any success, because art directors used it constantly to find talent. That's how they identified the industry. My theory is flip it and use it to find the art directors. Find 3 or 4 artists that you can use as a muse, that are doing the type of work you want to do. Collect a body of their work, maybe 15 or 20 samples, or I think 10 or 15, maybe even too small, but 15 samples of their work. Follow it backwards to the venues they created it for. And then ultimately, this is going to become your audience. These are the people that are hiring the artists that do what you want to do. It's different for every student. Every student has a different, kind of a different direction. And again, let the art drive it. The art that you want to make. I mean, remember that you no matter what, you're an artist first. Your job is to be creative and to make great art and to visually communicate. Choose what you want to do the most. Picking what you love to do is critical, because you have to compete with others that are doing that. If you choose something that you don't want to do and there's somebody that wants to do it real badly, you're going to lose. I don't care how talented you are. I always joke about it. People will walk through walls because they want to do something really badly in this industry. And you might as well be happy with what you're doing. You're going to be better at it. There is a place for almost everything. And use those resources to figure that out. Now, Katherine, I knew you before you went into the industry, and I know that you were well-versed. You went to a really good art school. You went to Ringling College of Art and Design, came to the Illustration Academy, and you had a lot of knowledge, but you also had you had a really good understanding of who was doing what. And
stalking.
Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it really does come down to what they'll call subtle stalking. Because like you have, just find your favorite artists, find out like, why do you like their work? And then afterwards, if you want to do work that is similar to them, chances are they probably have like the same goals as you and had like the same reasoning why they had a particular reasoning why they went into that field. And it probably more or less might mirror your own reasoning and your desires and what kind of art you want to make. So a lot of it is just subtle stalking of the favorite artists you have, and then just doing a lot of research, so much research. I think I spent like 2 to 3 months just doing research on who art directors were, looking for magazines and everything. Like this goes for all fields, not just editorial. If you don't do your research, how will you know how to craft your portfolio?
I think it's very true. And I think it's, obviously the idea of our portfolio development class is to make portfolio pieces, but it holds the student to kind of their feet to the fire of, you got to commit first. You have to say, this is what I want to do and who I want to make it for. And this is what the function is going to be. Because again, you have to be able to show function, and it has to be appropriate for the art directors that you want to work for. So you got to know who the art directors are, and you got to know what they're looking for. And so it's part of your job. It's part of the job to create a portfolio. Know what you need to put in it before you start making the pieces. I think I have some follow-up here. This is actually from our character design portfolio class. And it is it's Lake Hurwitz's Miro. That's the product that he used to communicate. Is he put this together in Miro, which is a very common tool used in studios now. It's a communication tool, but it's the exact idea from that illustration program, and he developed it from that. And it's okay. You research and identify the opportunities as in the concept art industry. You identify 3 to 5 employers. You collect samples of functional concept art from each employer. It's doing the exact same thing that I have the illustration students doing. But it's really kind of focusing on studios more than it is, obviously publishers or magazines, that type of thing. But you got to know what the industry is asking from you. You got to know the skill sets that you have to have, and you got to make work specifically for the people you want to work for. It's all about focus, and Lake does a marvelous job with it. This class follows our intro to character design, and then our advanced character design. I'm gonna kind of pull all that together here, and Katherine, please help me with this. Every one of our classes was kind of put together. It's like we worked backwards to develop our education, and it's like, what do we want from this? Well, we want to help people, give people the best opportunity to develop career, and if you're going to do that, you have to think about what the industry wants, what the industry needs. And then that relates to what you have to learn. People come into our program with all kinds of varying levels. Katherine will attest that more than anything. She teaches our entry class. Katherine has students come in that have really high facilitation and some that have very little facilitation. But the overall idea of what we're teaching, it comes from these 3 buckets. Even in the skill and craft class, you're dealing with a certain amount of ideation, and you're dealing with a little bit of the industry. But I think we have to pull from all 3 of these parts to properly help somebody develop a portfolio. And I'll kind of walk through how we organize that. The class that Katherine teaches is process, skill, and craft. It's very much focused on, I have further information on it in here, but it's very much focused on the physical principles of constructing a picture. You learn the process and the pipeline, the act of making a picture with an art director. That's where our process document came from. This is what I do when I work with an art director, and I just worked backwards and added all the skills that are needed to properly do that. And that's what we focus on. You learn the 3 value thumbnail, you learn about value control, right, Katherine?
Yeah, you learn about value, you learn about composition. There's anything to make a good image.
Yeah, we introduce simple color, we introduce lighting. It's very much the physical aspects of making a picture. But even in that class, Katherine introduces the power of ideation, being able to properly use word stacks and cross-polarize ideas to create metaphors and analogies. Almost everything you do as an artist, both on the concept side and on the illustration side, everything starts with text. And our battle is, how do we get from text to visual and it be functional? There's all kinds of techniques to do that. In this class, the second class is very much, it's the cognitive side of breaking picture making kind of in 2 directions, either a narrative direction or a conceptual direction. And that's pretty much covers most illustration. Technical illustration was taken out with digital, the digital photography. And there's very few, there's not a world for technical illustration like there used to be. It's really come down into storytelling and explaining an idea with a concept. And so those are the two major directions that we're trying to advance in. And then you use those two techniques from the first two classes to put a portfolio together. And then in the last class with Sterling Hunley, and I should say, and I'll do this real quickly. The illustration department, these are our faculty members. There's a beautiful piece by Katherine, beautiful piece by Audrey Benjaminson, Dale Stefanos, and Sterling Hunley. You saw a bunch of my stuff, so you don't need to see that. The character design is taught by John Neimeister, who's an art lead at High Res Studios in Atlanta. Vivian Costi, who's lead concept outsourcing supervisor at Blizzard Entertainment, and Leigh Kurowitz from Wizards of the Coast. These are all notable people in the industry. They work with the best artists in the industry. They produce just for the best entertainment companies. And here's an example of John's work, John Neimeister, what Vivian Costi does with character design, and then Leigh Kurowitz for Wizards of the Coast. I think if I keep rolling here, I can explain this stuff pretty easily. Our contact with mentors. We refer to our program, again, the information is designed, the ultimate goal is to make a professional portfolio. Our classes are 10 weeks long. Each semester is 10 weeks long. We offer 4 levels of classes, and they're not really levels. They're kind of different information, different sources of information. But it's there, as I said, that those classes all have a very specific thing to do to get you to a point that you can create a portfolio. In each class, has your homeroom instructor that you meet for 3 hours live on Saturday on the illustration side, and then you meet live on Sunday for the concept side. They're 2 different programs for the character design program. We also meet both programs come together on Wednesday night in study hall, which I run study hall. It is really my favorite part of what we do. You get voices. Can you imagine all the illustrators that want to do those RPG games, that want to do magic cards, and then they're in, Leigh Kurowitz is a huge contributor to study hall. They get the voice of the art director from Magic, from one of the art directors from Magic, is in Leigh Kurowitz. They get that voice from the other side, from a concept artist point of view. So you have 6 hours of live meetup with mentors a week. And then we communicate in Discord on a daily basis. So this is an example, just a clip I pulled in. I took out the, you can't really see what Katherine has written here because it's so small, but it's just, we communicate, students ask questions or they submit work, and then all of this down below is Katherine's response. And that happens multiple times a day. Sometimes our instructors will organize and say, I'm going to be in the afternoon on Tuesday, I'm going to be in the afternoon on Thursday, and be able to review work 2 or 3 times a week. It's just really what makes it work as a mentorship. And then, speak up.
Oh, you'll always have time to talk to the instructor and the mentor.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. Our guest speakers, these are our guest speakers. We, on top of those 20 meetings in the 10 weeks, those 23-hour meetings, you also have 3 additional guest speakers on top of from the other program, or from both programs, actually. These are our guest speakers for next semester.
You meant 6.
Well, yeah, but you meet in homeroom 10 times.
I just want to make sure everybody knew there's 6
guest speakers, 3 concept guest speakers and 3 illustration guest speakers. You get to see them all live. And if you're in the illustration program, you can see them live on Sunday. if you're in the character design program, you can see the illustration guest speakers live on Saturday. So that we moved them to different days so that there would be no conflict that way. Real quickly, what happens in each of the classes. This is the basic document from process, skill, and craft. This is what I was mentioning, that this is the act of making a picture with an art director. This is what Katherine teaches. This is the base of that class. All of these skill sets underneath, we delve into these things. Again, people come in with very different skill sets. Some students come from ateliers that have amazing skill sets that don't have any understanding of how the illustration industry works. They don't know what pipeline is. They don't know the power of process. And this is the power of process, learning to use the 3-value thumbnail, learning value control, learning shape design, simple color, very physical, basic picture making. And all of it relates to, okay, if you're going to work as an illustrator, you're going to do thumbnails for yourself, but you're also going to create sketches, thumbnail sketches for the art director. And you're going to have to get approval to move forward to do a final drawing for yourself, but you're going to have to show the art director, get approval to go forward. I know, Katherine, this doesn't align with every part of the industry. I know the op-ed pages and some of the dailies that you do, like for the New York Times, you have what, 7 or 8 hours to do an illustration.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you do in those cases? What do you show them?
Oh, I still show them my thumbnails and like the values. And after that, like I skim on the reference and the value study I do for myself, but I skim on the reference. They can deal with it.
Never, you don't want to show the art director reference.
Yeah, exactly. But you still follow the 5 steps.
Right.
Every project, no matter how long the deadline is, no matter how short the deadline is, you still follow these 5 steps.
I think you were you at the Academy when Bill Sienkiewicz came?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So, and that might have been his first or second year. But Bill Sienkiewicz, phenomenal superstar comic artist and graphic novelist. He came, and I remember him, joking with me the whole time we were there. Our figure, everything that we did, he would always have something fun to say, and he always dove into it. And when he went back to LA, he sent me a photograph of this document on his drawing board. And he goes, man, I forget sometimes. He goes, this is what I should be doing every day. I just thought that from somebody that great to be able to say that, I thought that was so cool. So examples of what comes out of that class and what we're looking for. The second class, that cognitive class of ideation and visual storytelling, which Katherine introduces in a beautiful way, looks like this. It's almost chaos. It's learning to start with language, to start with text, and to start associating text with iconic visuals. Those visuals start to initiate your visual as an illustration. And there's all kinds of ways to cross polarize it, to get to create metaphors, and it's a way to manufacture a solution, an idea. Instead of just sitting around and waiting for something to happen, you're chasing it, and good things happen so fast if you learn the technique. And then you get into a portfolio class, and then you get into a career development class that Sterling Hunley teaches. I should have said Audrey Van Jamison teaches this class and does a remarkable job with it. Audrey's another superstar in the industry. And then, whoops, excuse me, I missed. In Sterling's class, it's all about, okay, I have the beginnings of a portfolio. What do I need to start my career? Okay, so I need a website. How am I going to approach these art directors? Sterling is a firm believer of a newsletter. How do you send an introductory email? What does it look like? What does a direct mail piece, a postcard look like? There's a lot of art directors that love getting, there's some that don't, but most do. Art directors love art. They love illustration, and they love to keep visuals that they like. And so whether it be, Suzanne Basili or Irene Gallo or Lauren Penapento, art directors that we've had, just come and talk in our program, they talk about the way they keep all their postcards. And Suzanne has a box that's only this big. And she said, to put a new one in, I got to take one out. That's the rule. And I just thought that's really cool. It keeps it fresh. And she said, but it could be of the same artist. And then Irene Gallo has a folder that she puts things in that she collects for the month and then reviews it at the end of the month. And then things are pinned up all over art directors. Well, a lot of them are working from home now, but they're all over their offices. Shows and competitions, really, really important. Going to industry events.
Especially when you're starting off.
Yeah, to meet other people, to meet art directors, to meet other artists. Going to the Society of Illustrators show, going to Lightbox is coming up here pretty soon. Going to Lightbox, and it's a huge industry event. And then Icon, yeah, just happened in Kansas City. Then you got to continue to develop portfolio missions, keep growing. But the goal of this class is to put your foot in the water and actually get out there and start doing it. Now, there'll be some that aren't completely ready, and there'll be many that retake this class. This last semester, we had 3 individuals that have been in this class multiple times. They're superb. They're getting work, but they want to keep working with Sterling, and they want to keep, Katherine smiles. He's kind of smart.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, he's extremely helpful. He also can help you with, Sterling has done a number of Kickstarter campaigns. He talks about Kickstarters and crowdsourcing, talks about self-publishing. Has a very entrepreneurial approach as an artist. He does gallery work. And I really feel like I have in our program that the instructors that are teaching the classes are equipped for that information very well. So I wanted to show one more thing, and this is a portfolio brief. I'm not going to mention the student's name. This is the work that they put into. Now, there's another part of this that I won't bother showing. It's just a list of, putting all the art directors onto a list. But this is an artist that wanted to do visual development. I know we talked about that earlier before. And she realized that with the visual development artists that she chose 3 artists. She chose Carter Goodrich, she chose Dyson Numi, and she chose Peter DeSev. 2 of these names, everybody in this room knows. You probably, maybe you don't know their names, you know their work because they're iconic and they've done things that are massive. The 2 that I'm referring to are Carter Goodrich and Peter DeSev. They both started as editorial illustrators. They developed into the publishing world, very much like, as I was talking about Katherine's categories and how she started editorially, and then all of a sudden the book and the film and other things came. Well, the book work came for them, and they became very successful picture book illustrators, and the animation world discovered them. And so this is the homework and the due diligence of tracking those 3 artists. There's Dyson Numi. This is for Blue Sky Studios. There's Peter DeSev. Peter DeSev designed all the Ice Age characters for Pixar. Carter Goodrich designed all the Brave characters. I don't know if every one of them, but predominantly they were his character designs. So this is Blue Sky. All of these artists, or these 2, work for Blue Skies, and here's a few others. And then most importantly, the information they're garnering is the art directors and the look and feel of the work. Is this work that I want to do? Sony Pictures, there's Carter Goodrich. Those artists led them to these venues, and they got to learn about the stories that happened at those venues, the the genre, the type of the look and feel, and the appropriateness to that they could relate to for their work. And then ultimately, who are the art directors? This is I didn't want to use a current student, so this is from years past. Art directors move around a lot. So I don't know how helpful, if anybody goes back and starts looking for art directors at these studios. I bet they've moved around, or maybe not. But I just think this is fabulous. You're getting the visual, and then you're getting the audience that you're trying to develop for. There's Carter's character design. And again, this is like just learning what a great character sheet would look like, so important. Real Effects down in Dallas. Leica's a stop animation studio out in Portland, Oregon. She didn't know these places. She's learning about these places. All the art directors at Nickelodeon. Sarah had left. Sarah was at Ringling before you were. She was an academy student.
Mm.
I get a kick out of it when I see past students that are relating to looking at other students. I just think that's so.
John, I was just going to say, we've got a lot of Q&A questions. So I think they're all over the place. So you're probably going to want to save them for the end.
Okay, so we have like just a couple more slides to show, and we're on it.
I also love how you're always like academy student. It's always great.
Well,
You
out
see
of the last semester, the 7 big classes we ran, 5 of the instructors were past students of ours, and every one of them is notable in the industry. Not just like works in the industry, but as a standout, an award winner. And I that to me means a lot, because they went through this process. They did similar steps. It may have not been as clarified as well as this, but it's the steps that they were taught to develop in the industry. And so they're the perfect people to deliver it. And then everything changes here from Tonka House. This is Dice Tsunumi opened up with Robert Kondo. He left Pixar and they opened their own studio. These images could be for the visual development world as block art for the animation world, or it could be children's book work. And it could go either direction. And that was the interest of this particular student. And so the second half of the research became all of the children's book publishers. Who were the art directors at the children's books, producing the children's books she wanted to work on? Very similar, and they kind of go hand in hand. As I said, they do very much the same thing. This looks like block art for animation. And there's so many of these people that are either instructors or past students from the academy. I love looking at them. All right, so let's answer some questions. Timmy, are you ready?
Yeah, let me see what would probably be, this is I would say this is a good pitch. Is Catherine, is your work mostly digital or painted?
Oh, it's all digital, except for like 2 or 3 out of the hundreds that I've made.
Let me see here. Let me get the good questions. Oh, here's a good one. Hey, I'm a freelancer.
Timmy,
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you because I think it's best to understand there's a lot of students in our program that approach traditionally and finish digitally, or they just shoot digital photography of their work or scan their work at the end. Many of our instructors work completely digitally at times. Sterling might do a completely traditional piece and then just scan it and send that as a digital file. It's Catherine, wouldn't you say that it's not a necessity to work now in the concept world, it's a different story. But as an illustrator, and depending on speed or you always have to deliver digitally, but you can work in any medium you want to.
Yeah, you can work 3D. Red Nose Studios, they work in 3D. They work with like models all the time. You can work 2D, you can work with Blender. You can work watercolor, you could do paper cut. Everything's like a possibility when it comes to illustration. As long as you turn in the file, as long as you turn in like a JPEG, you know.
That's right. It's just got to
Yeah.
show up.
Exactly.
Don't drive it there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a freelance illustrator who's worked full time for about 3 years now, building a client list, etc. I'm looking to pick up bigger clients and was wondering how important is it to have an agency for a continued career?
I would say it's pretty important. Like I admittedly don't have an agent right now, but I think that if you are going to advance in the industry, start working in like bigger jobs like advertising, institutional, even like other companies like animation companies and stuff. I think it's pretty crucial to have an agent who'll just like be able to negotiate like a better wage for you, who'll be able to like look out for jobs for you, who'll be able to do like the dirty work, like the invoicing and like all that, the taxes, not taxes, but like, you know, the financial side, contractual side of things, and just be able to like take a weight off your shoulders for you to really just focus on art. Because as the jobs get bigger, your responsibility as an artist also, the tasks that you have to do, the amount of work you have to do also gets bigger. So you may or may not want to have somebody who's been able to help you do the like small details that you may not want to get to because you're too focused on making the artwork.
I think that's like individually. I mean, when I worked, I always had an agent. After the first couple of years, I always had an agent. But I worked. That's when I got an agent when I started working outside of editorial. Editorial, I don't think you're required. I think everybody sees editorial, and I don't think that agent. And I think most editorial artists I know don't have agents, or a bulk of them don't. When you get into the advertising and institutional world, it becomes very important.
Yeah, I was gonna guess, Catherine and John, that like when they're good agents, it's probably pretty amazing, and when they're bad, you're like, who needs an agent?
Yeah, that was my experience.
Right, and that's the thing about editorial. It's like,
Yeah.
why do you need one? Because everybody sees your work all the time. I tell you where you really need an agent is in the children's book industry. And those agents are specific to that part of the industry. Yeah, they're different from the traditional illustration side.
Yeah, because I'm imagining any representation that results in you getting work and also allows you to be an artist more than a business person. I think that would probably be a good thing, right?
I thought I didn't, and again, and I was told this, and I still tell students this. You don't need an agent until you're busy. I don't think an agent is going to make you busy. I think, and I also think it's really important for an artist to discover what an agent does by doing it for themselves for a while. And then once they get to the right place, and whether it's awards that they're winning or they're just being seen all over the place, then it makes sense. Because I mean, the last thing you want to do is sign with an agent that's going to get you one job a year.
Yeah, John, what you said is really interesting because, man, one of the most dangerous things I think that can happen when you start a business and you start hiring people to either assist you or work for you is hiring somebody to do something you don't understand at all. That's when you get taken advantage of.
Absolutely. So, figure out what an agent does. Really important. The other thing about choosing an agent is find somebody that's relatively close to you in age. You want somebody that's established, but you don't want an agent. You don't want to be 25 years old and working with an agent that's 70 years old, because it's not going to last for very long. So their job is to help you develop their career. And I know some of the best experiences I've seen is illustrator agent that have developed together. and because there's a common goal, and I think that's very important.
Okay, here's another question. Is it acceptable to build different types of portfolios? For example, a children's book style, fantasy and horror, as long as each portfolio is consistent with their own tone? Would it be better to include one or two from each? I don't quite understand the end of this question, but essentially, like, does it make sense to have multiple portfolios that have different tones or objectives?
I mean, it is totally possible, but my advice is just don't spread yourself too thin. You know, like the reason why we talk about like focusing on like one career path, not one career path, but like one field and really trying to like hone in on that one is because like you're putting all your effort into that one route. Well, for now, you can always expand afterwards. When you like spread yourself very thin and try to go for 5 at once, you know, your chances of success are higher if you just go down 1 versus if you try to go down 5 at once.
Yeah,
I
I
completely agree.
understand the last bit of the question, which was, it's like a second question, which was then, I guess, if you have a variety of work, is it worth showing some of that variety to express that you have some range?
Well, I discussed range, and if it's range within that one particular direction. Again, I don't think, and there's certain parts of the industry that go really well together. The publishing world and the editorial world can, it's usually the next step is somebody wanting to do book work as an editorial illustrator. But you can't show like something that's a naive children's book work, something that's really simplistic and expect to get, really high resolution fantasy horror cover. So nobody can make that leap. So if you do both of those things, I agree, separate them. But I would tend to focus on one and develop in one area first. I've seen more illustrators have success doing that than anything. And then that kind of their careers kind of broaden, just exactly what we discussed with Katherine. It started editorially, then the book work, and then the film work, and but it all looks like it comes from the same artist, but it has very different functions.
Yeah, I just think like it cognitively it makes sense. Like if I go down 5, like if I have 5 portfolios, then 5 different industries will see my portfolio, and like your chances will get higher that way. But I think I just don't like realistically. I think it should be better to focus on one, and then you can expand afterwards.
Back to that memorable thing, I think it's harder to remember lots of different directors. If you're really leading with one,
Oh, that's a really great point, John.
it makes it easier for them to remember you.
All really memorable things they don't just hit everything on the head. They have really, they have really dramatic ideas that hit one feeling or one emotion or one idea, I think, really well.
All of this work I'm flipping through,
Yeah.
it's all gorgeous. It's all got different purpose, but it all feels like it comes from Katherine. And
Yeah.
that's the ultimate.
Okay. This is a really good question, because I think it's a question that changes. Which one of these websites would you say is it worth to have an illustration portfolio presence as an illustrator on? And I like this question because I think it's the one question I can help with. Behance, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, DeviantArt, Pixiv, any others? Are you familiar with Pixiv, Katherine?
I am. I'll say that I think it's kind of different for each one. Like whatever you're trying to go into is a little different. I would say DeviantArt and Pixiv, cross it off the list, and because unless you're trying to get into like solely like Japanese market anime art, then go for Pixiv. For the most part, like if you're like trying to stay within like editorial and like, I think at the visual arts pastures, we tend to deal with like more Western markets. So
Yeah.
I would take Pixiv off the list unless you're trying to go into the Eastern markets.
Uh-huh. Do you feel like, and this is just like my observation. I know like a lot of people talk trash about Twitter, but it just seems like so many art directors live on Twitter. And of all of the, I know it's not like a super image based platform. I know it comes with a lot of baggage, but one of the things that's really interesting to me, Instagram is making a huge push towards video. We were talking about this earlier. So like you really get what is like, you kind of get not shadow banned, but like you get a lot, you don't get as much spotlight as you used to sharing stills. In addition to the fact that the only clickable links in Instagram are your bio link, which means for the person or like an art director to see your work, they not only have to, they can't just like click, they have to make multiple clicks to get to your website or to contact you. Whereas Twitter has direct link clicks in every, like in your tweets. So like, as far as like having call to actions in your posts or the content you're sharing, Twitter, I feel like is pretty strong. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think Twitter is one of those platforms where it's so unpredictable what will blow up, what will not blow up, that like, I think it's safe for me to say that like in your Twitter lifetime, you will have at least one post blow up, and you can always take advantage of that and ride that exposure wave. And then like really take advantage of like how many people are coming in. It's like very incidental how you can like come across a new artist. Instagram is much harder. Like Instagram, you can follow an artist and then it'll start recommending you to like a bunch of accounts that are like promoted for that specific category. Instagram is too curated in my opinion, but it's a great place for you to like compile your visual just like update visually.
What I would say with relative confidence that you could build a following on Instagram slowly, you can have a presence there, but you will no longer have like an image blow up on Instagram, like go like whatever you call it, like go viral or have like 1,000 people look at it out of nowhere. It's just not, that platform is just not designed to reward still images anymore. That's not to say like as an artist, you might not create content that could succeed on Instagram, but it's not going to be like a still image if you do.
But it's not just you succeeding though. The thing that I like about Instagram, Dale talks about this a lot. He said it's very much habit for most illustrators to post assignment and thank the art director for what they just finished. It's a great way to find the art directors. It's easy to stalk that way. In a very
to like stay in heat.
I mean, to really pay attention to that. And so they have it has its value. It has its value to me because I use it as a resource to follow a lot of artists that's very specific that I've been following. I just like seeing what they've done recently without a huge amount of noise. So
that's a good point. Probably should mention ArtStation, but not so much for
ArtStation. If you're in our character design program, and on the concept side, it's all ArtStation. That's every art director, every studio. They use ArtStation to find talent more than any other social media platform.
We need an illustrator to make an ArtStation for illustrators. I mean,
for the concept world, it is the most functional place.
Yeah, I would argue that in terms of like website for like portfolio presence, go for all of them. Like every single website, upload.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally. That's legit. Like right answer is just like post it all. Like
be there.
Yeah, post it on Pixiv too. get some Eastern clients.
Yeah, I was excited. I had to Google Pixiv. I learned a little something tonight. So, yeah. What are some good ways to make industry connections, and are they as crucial as they are when looking for clients? Are they important for looking for clients, do you think? Yeah.
Wow.
I
I'm going to talk just briefly about, we do all these guest speakers. So in 10 weeks, you're going to see not only your mentors that you have, but the mentors in study hall, and then all of the guest speakers. My theory about teaching art and learning about the industry is to put as many talented, successful people in front of you as possible. And it will show you opportunity. And so that's, and I'm taking, the voice of them, talking about some of the soft skills that become really important in the industry. One of them is, well, first of all, never burn a bridge, be nice, work hard, be trusting, all of that. But every person that I've interviewed, and I know this, Catherine's going to be able to answer this the same way, because I could name some of the people. The people, look left and right of you, the people that are doing what you're doing, pursuing other illustrators, trying to be part of a community, your school. Katherine, you know tons of people that you went to school with that are working in the industry, in different parts of the industry.
Mhm.
And, John Neimeister talks about this all the time. He's like, some of those people that, and he went to school with, he went to previous version of what we were doing. And he said, some of the people that were sitting next to me or that were in class with me have been some of the most important people in my career. And those connections that I started making. So building connections from day one becomes really, really important. We mentioned events, going to Spectrum, going to Icon, going to, if Spectrum will ever happen again, but going where the artists are and where the art directors are. You got to put yourself in the middle of it, and trying to make connections and trying to foster those connections. But I think it's, for somebody coming out of school and then saying, okay, well, I'm going to become Tim O'Brien's best friend right now. I doubt that's going to happen. And I'm going to become, Chris Payne's best friend or Gary Kelly's best friend. That's very unlikely that's going to happen. But you can become close to people that are in the same position you are, and having a continuous open conversation with them about exactly what we're talking about pursuing clients, I think that's how it works well.
Yeah, John,
I agree with that.
yeah, John, you're making me think about, like, Vivian was talking about all of the people that she works with at Blizzard now. And originally they were all her teachers.
Oh yeah.
Right.
John Mueller, her art director, she taught and taught inside of my program, and they became connected as student to instructor, and they stayed in contact. And John hired her when the opportunity arose.
I mean, years later, but it's just still really cool.
10 years later,
Yeah.
but it was, John Mueller. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the art director over the Diablo games.
Yeah. All right. Do you ever have an AD request a value rough or color rough?
Well, in my experience, I always turn in a thumbnail and value, like no matter what. There's no such thing as a thumbnail without value. In terms of the color rough though,
Thank you.
yes, I try to teach my students the same thing. And when they don't, I get so frustrated. But yeah, in terms of the color rough, only when they request it. They usually trust me enough to like let me do whatever color I want. If they have a problem with the final color, they ask me to change, like tweak it. But for the most part, unless like they have a very specific color scheme in mind, that's when they ask. But other than that, I don't think I've ever really needed to turn in color rough.
That's going to change. You're going to have more likely opportunities to have color roughs in different parts of the industry. Editorially, never. Every once in a while, I had to do a color rough for a book. I had to do color roughs for institutional pieces and for advertising pieces. Not always, but sometimes. I worked on 3 really high-profile movie posters that I had to do multiple color roughs, and that's really common. So, different parts of the industry require different things.
Yeah, so the follow-up question to that, which I felt like you kind of answered, which was, so all the thumbnails are blocked in with value
Yes, always.
always.
If
Value
it's
is
not,
the best.
it's not a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Okay, so picture making 101.
Yeah.
Picture making 101 is this. It's shape welding or shape design, and shape is best described by value. It's what we react to and what we see, and learning that concept to think that way. Values the driver of shape design.
This is the last question that we have for the evening, but it's a great one because I know what the answer should probably be. I want to hear about Catherine's process, how they come up with ideas for illustrations for personal work or portfolio work. Obviously,
Oh.
so there's a really great way to learn all about Catherine's process.
Yes, you can
Yeah.
take my class, Process Skill and Crafts.
but I'm sure we could dig into it a little bit to about like what is the magic to some of that.
Well, a lot of it is not magical at all. It is just writing and scribbling in your page until you just word vomit and like chicken scratch all over a page until something cohesive comes out of it. And then you just, because oftentimes you're working against a deadline, so you don't really have time to really think about philosophy and like really take in all the really like think about the nuances of this. So you just really have to get down and dirty and, like as John said, manufacture out an idea. Mm-hmm.
Processes of all the things that an artist can do. I mean, you can practice your drawing forever, and you do. I'm sitting here at my drawing board with a big drawing that I practice drawing. It's not for any other purpose but to be better at it. I've watched great artists that I've been around, Gary Kelly and Chris and my father. My father in his 80s would go to life drawing class with me. And was he going to be better the last few years of his life at drawing? It's just something that you do practice, and you draw different things. You're looking for different outcomes, but learning process will make you better as an artist more than anything else. It is the thing that will take your work to the next level. You'll learn the skills that are required in each steps of that process, but you'll also get everything right before you go to the next step. And that, I think, the artists that I know the illustrators that I know that achieved huge success, that have gone on to be painters, sell work in gallery, that type of thing, they still use that same process because they know it makes them better. And it's more efficient, it's time efficient. The time that you spend doing this search or the time that you spend, this is all for one picture. It's all, 10 different versions of how to make that picture. Well, each one of these took a few minutes. How long would it take you if you didn't use process to try to do a finish of each one? This is when your time is the most efficient. It's also the pipeline of what you need to show your art director, but it's going to allow you to be a better picture maker by exploring this way when time is inexpensive. and then getting the value structure completely right, getting your final shapes and drawing completely right. It all is designed to make you better, and it does. It just makes you a better artist immediately.
John, I always think of that talk that you had with Sterling Hundley for Studio Bridge, where he was tasked with, I believe it was the cover art for the Jungle Book. Was it cover art for a book?
I don't know if I don't remember if it was covered or not, but go ahead.
But he was tasked with creating an image for the Jungle Book, and he was going to walk through the creative process for concepting what he was going to make. And it didn't click. The ideation process didn't click for me as like the importance of it until he basically was like, look, I've been tasked with drawing like the most overdrawn, trite thing that like everyone has tackled. How do you come up with like an interesting, unique, new idea that still captures the essence of this like, 100-year-old story? And it was amazing because he finishes and you're like, whoa, I never thought of the Jungle Book like that. I loved it. To me, that made it click where I was like, oh, wow, this isn't just like brilliance. There's a math to this, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it is exactly that. It's how do you manufacture a solution to give yourself a way of creatively thinking that, the worst thing you can do, I think, is read something and then just try to sit around and think about what could I do. But if you dig into it and give yourself a method that will force the ideas out of you or get them flowing for sure, you're going to be much more efficient, and you're going to come up with better ideas. Again, a lot of people confuse this. This is illustration and concept work. This isn't like making a piece of fine art. It has a client, you're producing it for somebody else, and you're solving somebody else's problem. And so the first thing an illustration has to do is communicate. Does it solve the problem? And it's a visual mechanism to move an idea or a story forward. And if it doesn't accomplish that, it could be the most beautiful picture in the world and be a very low functioning illustration. Katherine does both beautifully. And to be a success in this industry, you have to be able to do both. You could also produce illustration with a great idea with really low resolution images. You could use cut paper. And there's many illustrators that work very simplistically. But it's all about the idea, and the idea is strong and works, and it makes for good illustration.
That's really, yeah, I think you nailed it on the head, John. Again, that was the last question. What a great talk.
Katherine, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank
You
you,
are my
Timmy.
hero. Timmy, thanks for putting this together, and I hope that we made some sense of things. And if you have questions for us, reach out to us.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody, enrollment closes October 1st. Classes start October 8th. And if you use discount code DRAWMORE, for those of you stuck around for the whole thing, discount code DRAWMORE is $50 off your first class. So I'll drop it in the chat too, just in case.
I'm signing up to take Katherine's class.
I'm about to take Sterling's class.
Yeah, this program is actually just a bunch of teachers taking each other's classes. No, that was awesome.